Hi, I'm Beth from Sew Country, and today's tutorial is another free pattern. This pattern is from Needle and Anchor. This is the second tutorial I've done from Needle and Anchor on this channel, and this one is for the Salty Sailor Mini Ditty Bag. This pattern is near and dear to my heart. This is one of the first bags that I began sewing when I started branching out of just little pouches. And I love it for the reasons that it is a simple make as far as hardware goes. You just have magnetic snaps for your closure on this bag, so you don't have to worry about installing a zipper if you're still a little unsure or insecure of installing zippers. And you get this adorable pouch. I have been using the same one I made in the beginning, one of my first ones, for about 8 years now. I use these for sewing supplies. I use them for my skincare routine. I give them to kids to take in the car for like putting their little toys in to have something to play with. Because this pattern comes together so quick and easy, it is a great item to add to your craft shows if you do sell at them. The hardware is so minimal, so your cost is kept really low. It's a free download, and the link will be in the description box of this video. Let's get started talking about the pattern pieces you'll need to sew up this bag. The first thing you'll need to do is you'll need to print out your pattern pieces. This is going to be the main pattern piece, your main body. It does wrap around the bag. So if you are going to use directional fabric, a directional print on your fabric, she does have the measurements as to what you will cut out for your two pieces, and then you will sew them together at the bottom, and then you would use your pattern piece to trim your corners. So I'm not using directional fabric. I only have one piece. This is going to be my lining. This will be my exterior. I'm using the same print for mine. I do this lots of times just for ease and makes it quicker to cut and quicker to put together. With mine, I'm using quilting cotton for both pieces, the exterior and the lining. On both pieces, I put a woven interfacing. This is a light to midweight interfacing, an SF101 equivalent. On mine, I'm using Royal Pixie Light. I'll have the link to that, but whatever you have that is equivalent to SF101 is what you would interface the back of both pieces. The pattern tells us to then add foam to the exterior. You can definitely add foam, no problems at all with that. I've done lots like that, but these days I prefer to just use a fleece. I actually use Thermolan, and the reason why I do this is I just prefer the feel of it. I feel like it gives it enough stability. So I went ahead and cut the fleece away from the seam allowance. Your pattern piece does have the markings for how to keep the fleece or foam out of your seam allowance. And I do recommend that with this pattern, just because you're going to be sewing some curves and you want that less bulk in those areas. So that is your exterior main and your lining. The next thing you'll have is your side gussets. We will have 4 of these. We will have 2 exterior, 2 interior. You could definitely make these pieces a different color than the main body. So on this, if you did that, you would just have a really nice contrast here. On your 4 side gusset pieces, you will interface each one with a SF101 equivalent. If you are sewing on a domestic machine that is not as heavy duty as some of the other domestic machines, it struggles with bulk a little bit, you would probably want to try your first one by keeping this interfacing out of your seam allowance. I'm going to show you why whenever we get to that step, and then you can look at that and determine it, but that is something you may want to consider. Whenever we are sewing the gussets on, there is a very small portion of this pattern, maybe about a 1/2 inch, that you will be sewing through 8 layers of fabric with interfacing. If your machine cannot handle that, or if it'll struggle on that, that would be when you would want to keep this SF101 equivalent out of the seam allowance for your side gussets. So the last piece we're going to talk about for this pattern is our base. Our base is given both with the measurements but also a pattern piece. We are going to interface our base with a piece of Decaville Heavy. If you do not have Decaville Heavy, that's okay, there are options. You could do 2 layers of Decaville Light, you could do a piece of Peltex, you could even use a piece of thin cardboard if you have that. The main thing you're wanting this base for is you're wanting to provide the support and stability on the bottom and to kind of help keep its shape. So when I sit it down, it sits nicely and it doesn't roll and it holds its shape there. You do have to realize though when you're working with this base, whatever you're choosing to use it, you are going to be sewing through this interfacing, this stabilizer, twice. So make sure you choose something your machine can handle. If your machine could not get through Decaville Heavy, you would want to use Decaville Light or something else. If you have any questions about interfacing or stabilizer, just leave a comment down below and we'll work through that. So these are the only pieces we need to make that super cute pouch. It comes together really quick. So let's go ahead and start talking about how we prep this pattern and how we get everything together and ready to sew. The first thing I want to look at is our base. We did center this Decaville Heavy around the base piece. What we're going to do is our long edges, we're going to take them and we're going to fold them up. It's going to look, I'm just going to finger press this right here so you can see, like this on our long edges. You can use a piece of double-sided tape along your Decaville Heavy to secure this in place. You could use glue, you could use clips, you could just take it to the iron, whatever you want to do. We're going to do this on both sides, but not the short edges, just the long ones. Your base is prepped. We are going to set this piece aside for now. The next thing we will do to prep for this pattern is we are going to take each of our 4 side gussets and draw a line 3/4 of an inch down from the top straight edge. What we will do with these is we will take this raw edge here at the top and fold it down to meet that line. So you can see it is just meeting that line. We're going to do this all along the top edge of each one of these. Like I said before, you can take this over to the iron and iron it down. You could also use double-sided tape or glue. I am just going to use clips now to clip each 4 of these and get them prepped. Now that I have each of my side pieces, the tops folding down to that 3/4 inch of a line, I'm going to separate my exteriors from my linings. I'm going to take one exterior piece and one lining piece. I'm going to put them right sides together and I'm going to clip all the way around the perimeter of this, keeping those top edges folded together. So I will clip them so that they stay folded together. So now I took those 4 pieces, I clipped one lining and one exterior right sides together. I made sure to keep the tops folded down and clipped. And this is what we have, 2 pairs. I'm going to set those aside with the base now. They are prepped. The next thing we want to do is we want to look at our exterior panel. We have to make a choice at this point. We need to decide how we are going to close this bag. I personally am using riveted magnetic snaps. These are magnetic snaps that I attach at the end after everything is completed with my rivet press. They're super cute and easy to work with, but they are more expensive than just the traditional prong snaps that you would get off Amazon. The pattern piece tells you the exact placement for where to put your magnetic snaps. If you are doing magnetic snaps with the prongs, you are going to attach them on the lining portion of your main panel, because this is where the lining would be and that's where you would want it to snap. The prong snaps will not be attached at all to the exterior. you would transfer the placement markings on the lining panel. You would have 4 markings for the 4 magnetic snaps. 1 pair here, 1 pair here, so 2 pairs in total. If you're using those snaps and not the riveted snaps, you can go ahead and attach those now before we go on to our next step. After you've attached your magnetic snaps, or if you choose to do the riveted snaps, the next thing we're going to do is pull out our exterior main. What we want to do is we want to find the center points along these long edges for this exterior main. I am just going to use a marking pen, and I'm going to mark within my seam allowance. I'm simply going to fold the 2 pieces together and mark right here along the side. It does not need to be a big mark. After we make the center marks on the exterior panel, we're going to pull out the base. At this point, you need to decide if you want to add purse feet to your bag or not. If you want to add purse feet, the pattern does have placement markings for you to add purse feet. I probably would do it if I was doing a really nice fancy bag as a gift on this one, but for this one I'm not, so I'm going to go ahead and attach this base to my exterior. What I'm going to do is I'm going to line up these short edges with my exterior main long edges. I'm going to use that center mark I just drew, and I'm just going to center this on that center mark. If you're uncomfortable, you could find the center right here, but I don't feel like it's necessarily that it's necessary. I feel like we can find that easily and just line it up and do it. So I do one side first. This side is centered. And I just clip it in place. Take it over to the other side, and I center that. And clip it in place. Yours will look something similar to this. You may not have the clips, and yours may be a contrast. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this over to the sewing machine, and we're going to sew 1/8 of an inch all the way around this base. So we'll top stitch 1/8 of an inch away on the long sides, and we'll just baste 1/8 of an inch away on the short sides. That will attach our base to our exterior main. Here's what my exterior main looks like now. You may have purse feet on yours also, but you should have your base attached. Now let's pull out the lining main. Yours may have magnetic snaps attached to the 4 corners of yours if you're using the prong magnetic snaps. What you will do now is you will take your lining and your main, and you're going to place them right sides together, matching up all the edges. Once you clip your exterior and your lining together, we're going to sew these 2 pieces together, but we are going to leave our opening at the top so we can turn them right sides out. I like to make sure that I sew past this curve, so I will probably stop my stitches. I'll start and stop right here, make sure to back stitch well, and then I'll do the same here, making sure that I do not have to turn on a curve. We are going to now sew this lining exterior right sides together, 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, leaving our opening in this short edge straight area, making sure we don't leave the opening on the curves. Now that we have these 2 pieces attached, our lining and our exterior, I'm going to trim up the edges a little bit. So we sewed at 3/8 of an inch. I will just barely trim and to straighten everything up, so probably down to about 1/4 of an inch. Leave it as a seam allowance. I will not trim this opening. That way I can ensure that I get a really nice even closure here. If you have pinking shears, you can trim the corners with pinking shears to help that bulk too. Now that I have my seam allowance trimmed down and the bulk is left here at the top, I'm going to turn this right sides out, and then we will go ahead and press everything to get it nice and smooth. I'm going to start my turning right sides out by going all the way down to that bottom corner. I always poke my thumb in there, so I open up my seam allowance and kind of poke that out. And then I pull it, and that's how I start my turning. Okay, I have it turned right sides out. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this even at the top with my opening. So what I'll do is I'll put my fingers in on both sides, and I will just pull. When I pull on that seam, it'll start wanting to naturally fold in, and we will then just push those raw edges in. I'm going to move my fingers out and clip that in place. I'm going to use these clips instead of the metal ones because it'll apply a little bit more pressure to kind of help fold that fabric down. I want this top edge to be really straight because it is going to be very important. If you look right here, that is the main focal point of the bag. So I want that to look really nice. So do take your time in getting that folded down and try your best to get it folded nicely. I am going to definitely take this over to the iron. If you look right now, you can see it's kind of bulky and fluffy. We do not want that whenever we're sewing this together. So I'm definitely going to take this and give it a really good press. But before I do, I'm going to go ahead and work on my side gussets because I'll need to iron those as well. So I'm going to set this aside for right now, and I'm going to pull out the 2 pairs of side gussets I have. I have these clipped together, an exterior and a lining right sides. What I'm going to do with these is I'm going to sew, starting here at the top, I'll backstitch here and go all around this rounded curve and backstitch here at the other side. So we're basically sewing 3 sides. We're leaving the top open. We will use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. That is different from our exterior where we just use 3/8. So make note, our side gussets get a 1/4 inch seam allowance when sewing around these 3 sides. Don't forget to backstitch well. Also, I want to point out that with this one, I do try to be really careful to make sure that my top edges, those folded edges, meet. So when I'm sewing, I'm going to start here, and that part will be easy to keep those connected because they're already clipped. When I'm sewing around and coming back up here, if I see this is shifting, I'm going to stop and put them back together again and kind of keep tugging and pulling the fabric to make sure I get an even flush finish at the tops of this side gusset. Now that I have both of these sewn together, exterior lining piece, 1/4 inch seam allowance, I'm not going to trim anything down, and I'm just going to push these right sides out. If you're worried about your corners, you could use pinking shears, but it would be so hard where it's only a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so I don't, and I've never had any problems. Again, I'm going to put my fingers there in the top, pull, and line up the side seams. And I'm going to use these plastic clips again to kind of help the fabric to apply that extra pressure so that it folds the right way. If you need to use your stiletto to poke out your corners, you can to get them nice and smooth. Even your bottom, it looks like it might need just to run the stiletto over there. And again, you can see these are really puffy right now, and we definitely don't want that. So we will also take these over to the ironing board and iron them whenever we do our exterior. We want this to be as flat as possible. Okay, so at this point in the pattern, you only have 3 pieces. That's all we're working with now. We're going to take these 3 pieces over the ironing board, and then we're going to put them together, and then we're done, and we can start using our beautiful pouch. I have everything pressed from over the iron, and I still have my clips on the tops. We need to top stitch along the top edge of both of our side gusset pieces to close that top. When we do this, we're just going to top stitch about 1/8 of an inch away from the folded edge. If you will look on the sides, you will see that your little side pieces may want to try to poke up whenever you're stitching. So just use your stiletto and keep those poked down, or at least flush with the top so they're not coming out, those raw and finished edges. The next thing you will do then is you will top stitch all around the perimeter of this main piece now. I'm going to start top stitching right here so I can make sure I close up my gap first, my opening. I want to try my best to keep these flush and even both sides so they look nice and neat in the finished pouch. Before you close up this opening, make sure you've either already attached your magnetic snaps, or you are going to use something that you can add at the end after your bag is completed, because once we close this hole, then that's done. But 1/8 of an inch away, top stitching all around this folded edge. Now we have everything top stitched, and it's time to do the final assembly. I'm going to have this main panel, and I'm going to have it side up. I'm also going to take my 2 gusset pieces, and I'm going to lay them down on this lining panel. I'm going to want to center this bottom with the center of my exterior panel. For me, I know that's going to be right in the middle of this gusset. So I'm not going to do any markings. I'm just going to put it in place, kind of eyeballing it, and then I'll use my ruler to kind of make sure I have everything measured and everything's even. So what I will do is place these lining sides together with that bottom edge flush. Let me put my hand here so you can see a little bit better what it's looking like. The curved edge is along that long side. I'm going to do the same thing for the other side gusset. I'm going to center this curved bottom on the lining side of my panel. So once I get this clipped on, what I want to do is I'm going to grab a ruler and just kind of check and see if they're basically lining up straight, and making sure I'm not way too off on my sides. You will have a little bit of discrepancy because just the way things go, it won't be perfect, but it should be fairly close. Okay, so this is what I have. My 2 straight edges of the gussets are towards the middle. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to lift this up and I'm going to start folding it around. I want to go ahead and when I start folding, put a clip right there in my curve first. Then I'm going to go ahead and wrap it around and continue clipping right there. And so this is what I have right now. I'm going to do that on the other side. I'm going to wrap that around and put a clip right there in that curve to secure it. I want these edges to match up and look pretty good, but I also know that, let me find the ruler here, it's going to be about 2.5 inches from the top. When I say that, I mean this top edge of my side gusset is going to be about 2.5 inches from the top of this main panel, and mine is. It's accurate. So that is that side completed. Let me go ahead and clip my other side now, and I will check again to make sure everything looks even and see if I need to make any adjustments. Fold it over, flip that gusset right in place. Where I don't have my magnetic snaps in, I'm going to fake it and I'm going to put some clips at the top. If you have your magnetic snaps, go ahead and snap yours now and let's look and see if everything looks good. This side looks really good and even. You can see that the tops are lining up perfectly. A really seamless finish on that side. Same thing on this side. My tops look great. This is your hardest step. So we're going to go slowly and I'm going to give you some tips and tricks as to what I could do to make this part go easier. First thing you need to know is that the best way to sew this is with a skinny foot. I'm using an 1/8 of an inch foot. If you have an 1/8 of an inch foot or a zipper foot, this is the foot you'll want to use because you want to get in as close as you can to this without having a big bulky foot in the way that's going to give you more grief. This little curve right here is going to want to shift on you. It's going to want to constantly shift even if you have a clip in place. So what I do is I'm going to put a little bit of glue along all 4 of my corners. If you are someone who hand bastes, this is a perfect place to hand baste. I do not. I also thought if you wanted to, you could just rivet all along the sides of this and be done. That is something that would make it easier probably. You do have some bulk right here. That might be hard for your rivets to go through, but if you're good with rivets, that would be fine too. Also, this is the part right here at the top where you have the 8 layers where you sew through. If your machine struggles with bulk, you would want, like I mentioned before, to have your interfacing on your side gusset out of the seam allowances. When you sew your side gusset, it's 1/4 of an inch that you sew them together. So if you would just cut your interfacing so that it is 1/4 of an inch in, you would have a thinner seam here also. My machine can handle it, so I'm okay. But I am going to glue my curves down. After I glue those curves down, I'm going to put my clips in place and I'm going to let it set to let that glue dry. The next thing you can do, at that point what I do is I just sew around after I have it glued. But if you're still nervous, if you're still like, hey, I'm really uncomfortable, what you could do here is you could sew just this straight part here first. Start sewing right here, stop sewing right here, back stitch really well to kind of lock in that area so you don't have as much shifting. Once I get my corners glued in or hand basted in, whichever you prefer, everything goes pretty good. I still sew slow, but it does work. So you're going to see me glue now. I'm going to use my Beacon 3-in-1 craft glue. This is what I get from Amazon. But any kind of fabric glue or whatever glue you have would probably work. I don't think like a school glue would work just because it wouldn't have the staying power. So I take that clip out, I open that up, and then I just put a little bit of glue there. I don't want like big gobs of glue. I just want a thin bead of glue there. Get that string out of the way, and then I just close that up, and then I put my clip. I'm going to put 2 right there. That's all I do. I'm going to do that for all 4 of my corners, then I'm going to let that sit and dry. It doesn't take long to dry. Honestly, by the time you finish one, the other side will probably be dry, but I'll probably let it sit for 5 or 10 minutes to let that dry and get really good in place. I've got my corners all glued and I did give it time to dry. Now I'm going to go ahead and treat these like they are not glued, meaning I'm not going to take my clips out until I get to that part that I'm sewing. This glue is not like a permanent, really super strong, so if you tugged at it, you could pull it apart. So just keep that there, use your stiletto, and we're going to start sewing this. When we sew this, she doesn't give us a definite seam allowance because it will depend on what foot you have. My goal with mine is to go between 1/4 and 1/8 of an inch. I lean a little more towards the 1/8 of an inch side, but I don't go right up against this. I want just a little bit of clearance there. And so I want to start stitching here, back stitch really well, and then go all the way down, back up, stop stitching here, back stitching well. When you put it down on your machine, you're going to lay it down so the exterior is on the bed, and you will have to push things out of the way. While you're sewing, when you get to this bottom curve here, you're going to adjust and pull up. I will keep my stitches kind of slow while I'm doing this, even though it's a boring thing to watch, just so you can see how I pull it back up whenever it gets to that point. So I'm using my hand, I'm folding everything out of the way, getting this clip out. I backstitch really well here. Here we go to that first curve. I'm going to make sure I'm lining everything up. I'm pushing that side gusset back so it is flush with that exterior main panel. Or lining, it's both the same now at this point. My glue is holding great. Went through that first curve perfectly. Now, as you can see, this bag is starting to lift back up since I'm coming up on that straight edge. And I'm out of that curve. I'm readjusting everything. I'm just holding everything flat. Coming on that second curve, I'm going to shift it down a little bit more. Back stitch again. I'm going to pull it off. I'm going to look and see how it looks. I have a slight bit of overhang right here. It doesn't bother me at all. It blends in fine. That's another good reason if you use all the same fabric, you can't even really tell. So this side looks great. I'm content with that. I'm going to repeat the same process for this other side, but I will speed this one up so you don't have to sit through the whole process again. Okay, I have both of my side gussets attached. Then the last step for me is to attach my magnetic snaps. You may already have this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clip my tops, and I'm not even going to measure. It doesn't matter too much to me. I'm going to take my hole punch, and I am just going to go down maybe an inch, and I'm going to snap through both layers, go on the other side, and do the same thing. The magnetic snaps are super simple. Now that I have the holes through both sides, I'm going to just put the rivet through the hole, put the cap on the back. We want to make sure we do the same one. So I'm doing both males on this side. You want to make sure you don't put like a male and female here so it wouldn't snap. And then the last step will be for me to take this over to the rivet press. I'm not going to show you that step, but if you ever want to see how to use the rivet press, I can give an in-depth tutorial on that. So now I have my bag completed. I just have to use my press to press those in place, and everything is perfect. I will probably keep these for myself just because I wanted some new ones. What I'm going to use these for is whenever I'm working on a project, I'll put my supplies like my hardware or any little pieces I'm cutting out in these. So I kind of have just like a little project bag that I can keep on my shelf and keep things neat and grab when I need it. Needle and Anchor does have a Facebook group. I'll have that linked below. If you make one of these, please post it in that group. I would love to see it, and I will definitely be watching to see if anybody makes any of these and post in the group. Also, I wanted to give a quick update about the next couple of videos I'll be putting out on my channel. The next video after this one will be more of an educational video. It will not be a sewing tutorial. It's going to be talking all about working with vinyl on a domestic machine, because the next tutorial I will do, which will be posted in about a week, I'm trying to keep on a schedule of 1 tutorial a week right now. I hope to change that in February and have 2 tutorials every week. For my next tutorial, it'll be an all vinyl crossbody bag. So I wanted to take the time to do just a little bit of a discussion on vinyl, but for people that already know how to work with vinyl, I didn't want to put that in the tutorial. I felt like it would make it too long and it wouldn't be beneficial for everybody, because some people may already understand the basic beginner steps of vinyl. So the vinyl video will probably be out this weekend, and then the crossbody tutorial will probably be out Wednesday or Thursday, a week from this video release, so next week. Thank you guys for watching, for subscribing, and for commenting on my videos. It means a lot to me, and it makes me want to continue making videos and to even make more, because it's been just such a sense of community and so reassuring. Thank you so much. You'll find my Instagram and Facebook in the description. Feel free to add me or follow me on Instagram. I'd love to see the things you make. Tag me in them. I love to be a part of this supportive community and see what everybody else is doing. And I can be inspired by you, and seeing the things you make pushes me to do more. Thank you so much. You guys have a great day, and I can't wait to see what you're sewing next.